Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here doing my review for Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse. This will have spoilers in the second half of the review, which I'll, of course, let you guys know. I saw this last Thursday, actually. Unfortunately, I went out of town the next day, so I didn't actually get to do the review. And as you guys can see, I have these little Spider-Verse pillows here. This is actually from Loot Crate, so if you guys can happen to find these, they were part of the Marvel Gear and Goods thing when they first did Spider-Man, which I believe was actually Spider-Verse, so got these two pillows here. Of course, they fit appropriately for the film. Really love the movie. Like, it was honestly an insanely great film. Like, I thought it was super sweet to look at. It was really funny. It had some great emotional moments. The action looked super cool too. So all in all, I freaking love this. Like, when I finished watching it, I went to see it with my friend, and we were both like, "Yeah, that's gonna be, that's like a Blu-ray purchase without a doubt." So when that comes out, like, I'm without a doubt gonna get it on Blu-ray. I actually want to see it again. I'm more interested in seeing that again than I am seeing like either Aquaman or Bumblebee, and I'm like, I want to see those at some point, but they just didn't really do much for me. Bumblebee I really want to see, but that's mostly because of the G1 stuff, and I know that that's going to be like maybe 2 minutes of the whole movie, so I'm kind of just like, I don't know if I want to hurt myself that way. But Spider-Man, super freaking fun. We finally get a movie about Miles Morales, which a lot of people may not know about. A friend of mine, he didn't know anything about Miles Morales. He thought Miles Morales was made up during the Spider-Man video game. And I was like, oh, you didn't know that? Like, Miles Morales has been out for years. I think at this point, I think it's been like 4 or 5 years, almost, like maybe 6. It may have also been less. So many comic stories at this point. It seems like an eternity. It's like 100 million comic stories. But he's been out for quite a few years at this point, and I've really enjoyed his character. He hasn't got a ton of play. He's been in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, and I'm assuming he's been in the most recent Spider-Man. Actually, I know he has because they put like everything in like the first 4 episodes of that show. It's really weird, but like every character has been in that show. But Miles is a really great character. He's in the new PS4 Spider-Man game, and I assume he'll be in the sequel because that game made so much money and got so much praise. They're gonna make it too. But this was really good, and I heard that this is getting a sequel. I heard it's getting a bunch of spin-offs, which makes sense because of the Spider-Verse stuff. But it was really fun. Like, it was just fun. Like I said, it was fun to watch it pretty across the board. It was legitimately everything about it I really enjoyed, including the music. The music was a big part of it. For me, the main standout for the music wasn't actually like kind of the big hits that people have been talking about, like the music that's been made with actual lyrics. For me, my favorite was the Prowler theme, and there's like a full version that also has lyrics. But the theme that they play in the movie is like my favorite thing in the whole movie. I was just like, man, it's so insanely menacing, and the Prowler visually, I think, is like one of the best parts of the entire film. The way they do that character, which I think is, I don't know too much about the Prowler. I know his character, just like I know Miles Morales. I don't know a ton of things about him because I haven't read, like all the stories and stuff. I just know like some of the bits and pieces here and there. I know some of the stuff, and I know where he's at currently as far as the comics are concerned. But what they did with the Prowler, I thought was really well done. So I really loved that for sure. And it was like a really insanely menacing version. There's some parts, it's even in the trailers during the scene when he's being chased. There's a part where he legitimately is like a silhouette, and because he's got like this spiky hood and it's like the cape, I was like, man, they made him look like Spawn a little bit during that very specific portion because it's mostly silhouette, but you can see his eyes, and they're kind of like Spawn's eyes a little bit. Which, now that I think about it, I guess Spider-Man's eyes are kind of like that too, or at least Carnage with the big eyes. But love the movie, like from beginning to end. I was like, this is freaking great. There are like a billion references all over the place. Now, some are insanely obvious, of course. It's in the opening where or not in the opening, but it's in the trailer where they talk about like all the different Spider-Man characters, and they say like, oh, this is what I am, and I got ice cream and this and that, and they reference the other movies where it's like, I got a kiss with Mary Jane, and it's the upside down kiss. So that they have those super obvious references, but they have other little stuff, like even going into the end credits, and not even like there's of course a bonus scene, an extra credit scene, but even in the actual credits, they have some random references. Like there's one for some, it's not a spoiler, obviously, it's just a random reference. But somewhere in there, there's a reference to Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, which of course fits perfectly considering this film. And I was like, that's really cool. Like, no one's going to remember that reference to Spider-Man, Shattered Dimensions, which is a game that came out years ago. I'm pretty sure that game came out before Miles Morales was even a character. And it wasn't even that popular of a game. Like, it didn't get a ton of praise. It didn't get a sequel. I guess technically it did, where it was Spider-Man 2099, and it was like just that character, or like him and like the main Spider-Man. But that was really it. So it wasn't like a super popular game or anything like that, and yet they had a reference to that game in there, and I was like, that's really interesting. Like, you wouldn't expect that sort of thing for like a meh, averagely popular Spider-Man game, but it fit perfectly with this film and what they were doing with it. So love the references that I understood. I'm sure there are a bunch that I still didn't understand, but a lot of the references easy to spot. If they aren't easy to spot, it doesn't matter because you're just like, oh, okay, that's just sometimes it's a funny thing. It doesn't even matter. And if you don't get it all, it's just like, well, hey, a million other things happening, but oddly enough, they're all kind of put together really well. So even though it's going kind of a million miles a minute, it's good. It works. It slows down during the emotional beats. It's got like those three main emotional moments where it's like it kind of brings you to tears a little bit. But it's really good. There's not much I can say. I feel like kind of without spoiling it, but all the characters I thought were good. All the different Spider characters were really cool. Lots of characters that people I'm sure have never even heard of. Like I said, my friend didn't even know Miles Morales existed before this movie came out. But you got Miles Morales, classic 616 Peter Parker, Gwen Stacy, Spider-Gwen or Spider-Woman. You have Spider, who is Penny Parker from the future, and then of course Spider-Noir, and then Spider-Ham. All the characters are done well. I think Penny Parker from the future is like the anime character. She, I would say, got like the least out of all the characters, but I think they did some good stuff with her character. I think they did good with everybody. Everyone had funny moments all the way throughout. Kind of different styles of action, but they're all Spider characters, so it's very similar. But I really loved it. Like, it was so well done with the way they kind of kept all the characters together, but it's still Miles' story at the end of the day. It's still how he becomes Spider-Man and kind of takes over and stuff like that. So all in all, fantastic film. If you haven't seen it already, you're definitely missing out. Like, everyone has been praising this movie for good reason. So it's been a really great year for Spider-Man. Like, the game is utterly fantastic. So if you haven't played that, you're missing out as well. And even if you don't play games, like if you have a PS4, at least I can't say like buy a PS4 just for Spider-Man. You'll get some fun out of it, but it's hundreds of dollars just for one game. But you should find a way to play it at least. I mean, it's so freaking good. And then this movie comes on, it's like, man, there's two fantastic Spider-Man things that came out. And I love Spider-Man, of course. But yeah, really, really good. Of course, like I said, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. If you have seen it, see it again. I mean, I'm going to see it again. I just got to figure out when I'm going to see it again with the holidays coming up, when I'm going to like actually have time or extra money, with gifts, to actually be able to see it again. But I definitely want to see it again in theaters before it's gone. But love the movie. At this point, I'm going to get into full spoilers. So if you have not seen the movie, and you actually care about spoilers, just go see the movie at this point. But getting into full spoilers, the first thing I want to talk about is actually the action for the movie. So good. Like, the two big scenes that stand out, of course, are the very end, which is just really crazy. And then I would say, I feel like it was really the first big actual fight sequence. Like, everything else was kind of like, oh, there's some chase sequences here and there. Technically, Peter from Miles' universe has a fight scene in the beginning, but I felt like it was like, all right, it's a chase sequence and stuff like that, and there's action with the swinging and stuff. But for the most part, it's kind of like dodging this and that, and I guess technically 616 Peter fought Doc Ock, but it was kind of just like, all right, full-on action sequence. When they're at Aunt May's house and like all the villains come in, which I wish we got a bit more of Scorpion. I like Tombstone. I kind of wish we got to see more of him, considering his power is basically like he's impenetrable. I would have liked to have seen more of that, where he was a tougher opponent for the Spider characters, because these are characters that admittedly it does take sometimes it does take more than one Spider person to beat them. Like, sometimes Scorpion is super tough, especially this version, which I was not familiar with. But the ultimate version of Scorpion, ultimate version of Green Goblin, I knew he was like huge like that. But it's like, man, I kind of wish we got to see them a little bit more as far as like actual fight sequences. But I love the scene in Aunt May's house, and it's just like flipping around, and then it kind of still focuses. Like, even in that scene, it gets to the point where it's Prowler versus Spider-Man with being Miles. And just the way that they set up that sequence where like people are flying through walls, they're fighting inside the house, outside the house, and then it still centralizes down to this is Miles now knowing that the Prowler is his uncle, and they're going against each other. And it was such a good sequence. And then that led to like the super insanely emotional moment of him having to like take the mask off, or at least lift it up, and his uncle like pauses like, oh crap. And he's he's right there, and it's like, stop playing with him and kill him. And then he puts the mask down, and it's like, I'm not 100% sure what he's about to do. I was like, I don't think he'll kill his nephew, but I don't really know 100%. But he puts it down and he lets him go, and then he just gets shot in the back, and it's like, man, such a great moment. And then And of course, the ending action sequence was so good, and it's crazy visuals, at the end of the movie as well. But love the action, like I said, the emotional moments, being super good with that one. I can't even remember the other super emotional moments, but there were quite a few. I think it was that, and then when Miles' dad actually goes to talk to him was another really great moment. But there's like a third moment in there too that was like super sad and stuff. I think it was in the beginning, of course, with our naturally we have our cameo for Stan Lee, but it was just oddly timed with it being like it's the moment after the Spider-Man's death, and it's like, oh, in memoriam and this and that, and then it goes to the cameo, and it was like, well, dang, that was just obviously that was way before he passed away when that happened, and it was just like, that's super crazy that it just happened to be after that moment. And it makes sense almost that they would have that cameo right after Spider-Man, because Spider-Man is like the big one as far as Stan Lee's characters. That's kind of like at least single character. Obviously you got the X-Men and stuff, and now you have the Avengers. Everybody likes them, but Spider-Man was always there. It was always Spider-Man, so it made sense to, like, as soon as it's Spider-Man's death, you go straight to Stan Lee. But obviously with things being as they are, it was kind of a crazy little moment where it's like, oh man, that was just like an oddly timed emotional moment, where any other time it would have just been like, oh, Stan Lee's cameo, and it was funny, where it's like, all the costumes fit eventually, which I thought was funny. But it's just like, man, it was just crazy that happened to be right when he showed up, and it's talking about heroes and the loss of heroes and things like that. So definitely unintentional, but still an emotional moment there. But love the movie. Like, I feel like there's no point in really saying much about as far as the spoilers. It was just freaking sweet. Like, I loved all the characters. Spider-Man Noir, of course, everyone loves Nicolas Cage in this because he was great, and that was just super funny watching him with the Rubik's Cube and stuff like that. And the end credits is like, amaze your eyes and stuff, and he like blows the mind of his whole universe with the Rubik's Cube. But I thought that was super cool. I love the end credits. I was like, man, these are like ultra stylized end credits, and I love that, where they have like all the different Spider characters dancing and stuff like that. And that's where they showed the Spider-Man Shadow Dimensions reference, where it's actually I think it was just like 4 Spider Noir characters, or it was just like 4 regular like 616 Spider-Man characters, but it was all grayed out, and they were like kind of cascading. It was 4 of them. That's the Spider-Man Shadow Dimensions logo. Like, if you look it up and you happen to remember seeing it during the end credits, you know what I'm talking about. But I was like, that's super cool. So I love that. They had the Spider Buggy in there in the end credits as well, which I thought was awesome. But yeah, all in all, just a super fun movie. I love the way they did it with Kingpin and stuff, with him being the villain. I actually thought that was cool. That kind of takes it back a little bit to like the old days of the animated series and stuff, where like Kingpin was like a big Spider-Man villain, and then now we have it with the former, I guess, Netflix shows. Kingpin was like the big, it's the big Daredevil character, but Kingpin has always been a big villain for like both those characters, and it's just kind of funny where it's like, kind of a throwback a little bit to the old days, where it was like, I'm used to him being a big Spider-Man villain. So I really like that. I know some people didn't like the design. I was totally fine with it. It actually didn't bug me at all. I saw it like in a toy figure, and I was like, that's a toy that looks super weird. But when I was watching it, it was just like, yeah, he's ridiculously big, and it doesn't make any sense. Like, how does he get through doors and into cars and through anything? But it was just like, yeah, I was cool with it. I was cool with the crazy stylization of his character, and it worked for me. But loved it all the way through. I can't wait to see what they do with the sequel. I loved the after credit sequence where they have Miguel O'Hara show up, and it was like, that's cool. It's Spider-Man 2099, and then after that was sweet, and then they take it and they make it so freaking funny, where he goes back to the old 60s Spider-Man cartoon, and they do the pointing meme, and I was like, that's super hilarious, and everybody of course was laughing in the theater. But that was awesome. So whatever we get with the sequel, we get. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm curious. I assume that they're going to add more characters in. I mean, there's a lot of other people that show up in like the Spider-Verse comic that aren't here. Like, there's a ton of them. So I don't know what they're going to do with that. I assume Spider-Punk is like probably the easiest one to bring in. Spider-Punk, Spider-Man UK. I don't know. I would love to see them do like the animated version of the manga Spider-Man character, who is currently like one of the new things in something else. Sorry if I spoiled that, I guess. But yeah, I was just like, man, I would love to see. There's a lot of costumes, a lot of alternate, Spider-Man characters I would love to see. I would love to see them do a version with the symbiote Spider-Man. I doubt they'll do that. Where like somehow he was able to control it, or just do it in general, where it's like he's using it. It's Ultimate Spider-Man, or well, I guess it can't be Ultimate because he's dead. But some version of Peter, or maybe even another Miles, where he gets the symbiote, and maybe they make a symbiote version of his costume, and I think that would be cool to watch too. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the next movie. I'll be excited to see him have like his official costume as well, because technically in this whole movie he doesn't have like his comic book costume. They just spray paint it and it has like the red tips and stuff. But technically, he never gets like his comic book costume with the spider and everything. It's like the painted spider, which is not how it looks in the comics. So I'm actually looking forward to that. It'll actually be a different costume, which we barely get that anyway. You know, it only happens at the very end. So looking forward to the sequel. Looking forward to all the spin-offs or whatever they're gonna do with that. Love the visuals, love the comedy, love the action. I love the emotional bits. All the characters or all the actors did well, you know, as the characters and stuff. Some of the little twists and turns I thought were nice. The Doc Ock thing I thought was really cool. That was a good twist for me. I knew about Prowler, but my friend that I saw with, she had no idea, so it like blew her mind. She was like, I had no idea, and it freaked me out. And I was like, okay, so I knew they did a really great job with that because she was totally shocked. But yeah, I knew the whole time, but I love what they did with Prowler. I was like, this is like my favorite version of Prowler. I don't know too much about him, like I said, but from the things I had seen before and what I knew or read or anything like that, I was like, this is like an awesome version of his character. And, you know, he's still, you know, the villain, he's deadly and everything. And, you know, it kind of ends with him being deadly because he dies. But it was so good, and I cannot wait to see this movie again. But of course, would love to know what you guys thought about this movie, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it. What would you want to see in a sequel? Do you want to see it, you know, with the way they kind of tease it at the end, it'll be Miles going to Gwen's universe, and I'd be totally fine with that if we saw someone else's universe, if Miles was jumping all over the place like that. I'd wanted to stick with Miles as the main character. I wouldn't mind if they do it with Gwen, and I won't go into some of the comic stuff that I know about the other Spider characters that, you know, that showed up in this movie. I won't bother with that because it could be potential spoilers. But I wouldn't mind if they did that. I don't know what they would do if they did the Spider-Man Noir universe, but I would love to see them play around with that, where like everything's black and white and everyone else, you know, that's not from that universe comes in is like insanely vibrant. Like they can't hide, like they look super bright. I feel like that would be a really good joke for them to play around with. But either way, whatever they end up doing, as long as we get the same writers, I think we'll be fine. But definitely love this movie. Like I said, definitely want to know what you guys thought about it. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.